Welcome to the 6th meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on October 24, 2020. The committee is commencing its study on processing capacity. La réunion d'aujourd'hui se déroule.
Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid system in accordance with the decision of the House. The deliberations will be published on the website of the House of Commons. For your information, the web broadcasting will always show the person speaking rather than the entire committee. To ensure the smooth progress of the meeting, I will inform you of certain rules. Members of Parliament and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. At the bottom of your screen, you may choose between the floor, English, or French. Before speaking, wait until I recognize you. I would remind you that the observations of the members of Parliament and witnesses must be addressed to the chair. Please make sure that your microphone is closed when you are not speaking.
Ready to begin? And I would now like to welcome our witnesses. And for the first hour, we have from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, Ms. Teresa Giuliano and Ms. Tammy Suituka. I hope I pronounced this right. And for the first hour, and also from the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food, Warren Goodlett, Director General, Research and Analysis Directorate, and Monsieur Frédéric Seppi.
And Mr. Frédéric Seppi, Assistant Deputy Minister, Market and Industry Service Branch.
And Mr. Marco Valicenti, Director General, Sector Development and Analysis, Directorate, Market and Industry Services Branch. And Department of Industry, Ms. Cheryl Groneweg. Hopefully I didn't beat that up too bad. So hopefully that's good. So that's who we have for the first hour. And we shall start with Ms. Giuliano for 7.5 minutes. And you can start anytime, Ms. Giuliano.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Actually, Frédéric Seppi is presenting opening remarks on behalf of all of the departments.
That's fine, Mr. Seppi. Allez-y.
Go ahead, Mr. Seppi, then.
Chair, and it's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to speak. Are you able to hear me? Okay, thank you very much. So it's a great pleasure and honor for all of us to appear before your committee and to have the opportunity to speak before this committee. Before speaking to the current situation of the agri-food sector, let me start with a few facts on the importance of the food processing sector to the Canadian economy. In 2019, the agri-food sector was a key contributor in terms of the gross domestic product, employment, and exports. The food and beverage processing industry is the largest manufacturing sector in terms of GDP, representing 17% of the manufacturing GDP, and in terms of job, with 290,000 employees. The food industry is a major economic driver for rural communities, as it purchases about 40% of total Canadian agriculture production. Small and medium-sized enterprises account for over 95% of establishments, while large establishments account for about half of the industry total output. Exports of processing food and beverages products stood at a record value of $38.1 billion in 2019. Globally, Canada is the 11th largest exporter of processed food and beverage products in the world. In total, Canadian-based processors supply about 70% of all processed food and beverages that Canadians consume every day. L'industrie de la transformation.
The food and beverage processing industry had fairly positive results over the past 5 years. More specifically, let me give you an overview of its results in terms of growth, trade, and employment. The revenues from the food processing industry increased on average by 3.5% per year in comparison with 2.3% for the entire manufacturing sector. Among other things, employment increased there by 2.9% per year compared with 1.1% in the manufacturing sector overall. Finally, food and beverage exports from processing increased at an average annual rate of 6.9% over the past 5 years, whereas for the entire manufacturing sector, that growth stood at 3.5%. So overall, the possibilities are considerable for this industry, considering that the growing world demand for these processed products and also growth in population and revenues in emerging economies. The recognition of a regulatory framework in terms of food safety is a positive key factor for our products on foreign markets. There is no doubt that the current pandemic has caused an unprecedented shock to the sector because of major changes in demand for food products. And I will begin my comments on the impact so far by a warning. All the assessments do not reflect how this situation may change in the coming months. To give an idea of this spectacular change in demand, between February and April 2020, sales in the restaurant sector went down by 57%, and food and beverage retail sales increased by only 18% during the same period. Purchases in restaurants continued to be below the pre-pandemic period, and demand for restaurants is about 80% of the levels of before the pandemic. However, this percentage is no doubt lower now than it was in August because of recent restrictions applied in a number of regions of the country. Purchases in grocery stores in October were 8% higher than the levels prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, as previously mentioned. Although the supply chain appears to be stabilizing, we cannot take for granted the strength of this sector. Remarkable efforts have been necessary to maintain the grocery shelves well filled and also to keep food on the table, and the system remains vulnerable while it continues to suffer from the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the food processing industry has faced many challenges, including cost pressure, and the industry had to adapt to health protocols and changes in factories and cleaning, additional cleaning operations, and changes in manufacturing process that often reduced the levels of production. To ensure greater worker safety, businesses had to introduce or provide personal protection equipment to their employees. And labor costs have also increased considerably because of extra hours, risk premiums, and training. Among the other increased costs, there are the increased transportation costs, packaging costs, and increases in fees that have to be paid to retailers for the development of infrastructure such as e-business. Businesses have had to face losses of revenues from restaurant services without a proportional increase in sales at the retail level, as well as increased cost for excess inventories. So the overall financial impacts of COVID-19 on the food processing industry remain to be assessed because statistical agencies such as Statistics Canada continue to collect information over time, and it's clear that the impacts on the industry as a whole have not been consistent. To face the COVID-19 pandemic, the Canadian government has brought in a number of specific initiatives aimed toward the food industry to ensure that the food system is maintained safe and stable. To cite just three of these, the government brought in an emergency fund for processing of $67.5 million to help companies to make the necessary changes to protect health and ensure the safety of workers and their families, and to improve their equipment and facilities in order to improve the supply capacity for food in Canada. Another program was for the purchase of excess foods, $50 million, to assist in the most efficient possible handling of surpluses in the system in order to feed vulnerable Canadians. Finally, an assistance program for obligatory isolation of workers in certain situations, which is essential not only in the horticultural sector but also in our food processing sector. This $50 million program helps covering additional costs connected with the necessary 14-day isolation for the Quarantine Act for certain workers. I would also like to underline the efforts by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to preserve the integrity of Canada's food safety system. The CFIA placed priority on activities and services of substantial importance during the pandemic to deal with areas of risk and the protection of our... Mr. Seppi, excuse me for a moment for interrupting you. If I understood, you're going to talk for all three departments? Very well, so I'll give you additional time. It's normally 7.5 minutes per department, so I'll give you some extra time in order to get through it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the agency monitors national production and imported foods while supporting trade and the supply chain, particularly by certifying exports. And the agency has also temporarily suspended certain requirements for labeling that are not connected with food safety for restaurant products so that it's possible to reorient those products quickly towards the retail sector. And in order to prevent shortages of meat, CFIA has been working with provinces and territories to enable interprovincial trade in meats from provincially governed establishments. And to support this, the CFIA received an additional $20 million to continue its important work to maintain Canada's food supply system and better support the demands of Canada's food industry.
We expect that innovation in the food processing industry will have a greater emphasis. Business spending on research and development is vital to ensure that Canada's food and beverage processing sector responds to shifts in consumer demand with globally competitive products and processes. With continued support of Canadian innovators, we can capitalize on emerging technology areas and changing consumer demands, realizing incredible growth opportunities in the food sector. The Government of Canada is making targeted investments towards innovative companies in the value-added food processing sector through the Strategic Innovation Fund or the Innovation Superclusters Initiative. To further strengthen this sector and realize these recommendations, the Government of Canada is also awarded up to $30 million towards the Canadian Food Innovators Network through the Strategic Innovation Fund for the development of a network that will accelerate innovation and collaboration, specifically in the food processing sector. And with respect to investments, we continue to invest in industry to build capacity in the value-added food and beverage processing sector at the intersections between market opportunities and Canadian potential. The Government of Canada investment in the protein industry Canada Superclusters, known as PIC, is an illustration of these efforts. Through the Innovation Canada Supercluster program, the government recognized the potential of Canada's existing strength in areas such as pulses and the growing global demand for value-added plant-based food. In conclusion, although COVID-19 has taken a financial toll on the food processing sector, given its agility and its resilience, the sector can play a major role in the economic recovery. My colleagues and I are pleased to be with you today and to answer any question you may have. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Alors, merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Seppi.
Our question round. And for the first round, we have Ms. Leanne Rood for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Rood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Last week, we heard, and we've been hearing this all along from processor groups, that they're calling for a grocery code of conduct in Canada. And, you know, industry has been buckling under the costs of COVID-19 for the last 10 months or so. And now we are seeing retailers adding arbitrary fees of up to 6% to processors, farmers, while they're recording record profits. So, Ms. Groeneweg, at what point will the Competition Bureau step up and address the abuse of market domination by grocery chains?
Thank you very much for that question. I would just like to express that, of course, we share the concern about fair market practices, and departments are working together to ensure that Canada's food supply chain has the right conditions for all businesses to thrive. And I would note that this topic will be discussed in an upcoming federal, provincial, territorial agricultural ministers meeting to involve the provinces and territories to ensure the health of Canada's food supply chain. Now, with regard to the Competition Bureau, it is, of course, as you know, an arm's length organization to the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. And as such, I cannot comment on priorities or practices within the Competition Bureau itself.
Thank you very much. Now, producers and processors and others along the supply chain have had to, again, make significant investments to keep their workers safe. Now, the processing sector has estimated that an additional cost to them has been about $800 million. And just wondering why the processing fund was only set at $77.5 million, which is well short of the actual costs that we've seen going to processors to keep their employees safe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I can take this question from the member. So the decision was taken by the government, and therefore this is a question of policy, which as a public servant, I cannot provide an answer to. I can tell you that the program since its inception has received a number of applications. We have been assessing these applications in a thorough way. It continues to, the funds continue to flow. And we are also working beyond the terms of the program. We are working with processors to ensure that they have all the tools, the advice that they require to be able to adapt to for example, the requirements of local public health authorities, as well as the requirements from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Thank you.
I'm going to turn over to labor, because we know right now that, and I've heard from processors, from farmers across the board, that labor is one of the biggest obstacles that we face right now in this country as far as getting people to work and making sure that the positions are filled to keep our processors moving along and keep the factories open so that we can continue to have food in the supply chain. But I'm just wondering, you know, the federal government's own Barton report had tapped into agri-food as one of the leading sectors, economic sectors in the country. So how can we claim agri-food as a priority and ignore labor, which is, again, the biggest issue? So will your departments commit to developing a labor action plan for these sectors?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question from the member. In fact, the first, as you may be aware, tomorrow will mark the first virtual session of the annual federal, provincial, territorial meeting of Ministers of Agriculture and Agri-Food, and the issue of labor is on the agenda for that meeting tomorrow. In fact, labor, as you pointed out, the member pointed out, is a key issue for the agriculture sector, as well as for the food processing sector. You will hear later this afternoon from, I believe, a representative from the Food, Health and Consumer Products Association of Canada. And the number of vacancies in labor in the processing sector is quite significant at 28,000 jobs that remain vacant. And when you compare that to the 290,000 jobs figure I indicated in my opening remarks, it is quite significant. So this is why we are working closely with our colleagues at Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, as well as Employment and Skill Development Canada, who lead on several of the labor issues. We're working closely with them and with the provinces to make sure that we can do our utmost in terms of addressing these very significant challenges in labor in the agriculture and agri-food sector, as the member pointed out.
You have 13 seconds, Mr. Ruud. I don't know.
It's fine, Mr. Chair. I'll pass on the 13 seconds. I'll save it for later.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rood. Now, Monsieur Drouin, 6 minutes.
And now, Mr. Drouin, 6 minutes. Please go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I wish to thank all of our colleagues who have taken the time to come and engage in a conversation on food processing in Canada. And needless to say, as you will also understand, the importance and the fragility of food processing in Canada, I'm sure that COVID-19 has made that even more glaring. And one question perhaps that I would like to ask, perhaps for Mr. Seppi to begin with, is do we have some sort of an overview of food processing, for example? Do we have enough of it, that is, or do we not have enough of it in Canada? And is it sufficiently diversified in Canada? Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question from the member. Fine. Yes, I saw the image disappearing for a moment there. It's an excellent question, and when we think that we are one of the major agricultural producers in the world, the fifth largest exporter and also the fifth largest importer of agricultural products in the world. So that means that we have a very high capacity to absorb. We import a lot for our needs, and keep in mind that, as I indicated in the introductory comments, you have quite a large amount of Canada's demand for processed products comes from products processed in Canada. But the question of the capacity for processing can vary from one sector to another, as well as in sectors such as dairy processing. We have a very high capacity in comparison to our long-term needs, and under the supply management system, we will have a capacity sufficient to process according to our needs. In other sectors where we have a strong comparative advantage is, for example, in the meat products sector. We have a production capacity that is considerably higher than just Canada's needs, and we export the vast majority of the products in that sector. So this is an aspect which it's difficult to answer that question in view of the diversified nature of the sector. It's true that in some regions and in some sectors there may be insufficient capacity, but in view of the way our market economy works, it's really up to the market forces to determine what should happen, where there should be investments in order to add to the processing capacity. Thank you for that, and I think that you've touched on a point that is in fact an excellent point as to whether market forces are there in order to respond to market demands. And one thing is for sure, during COVID, we noted that certain sectors are too centralized, whether it be on account of transportation or perhaps when the virus spreads into a given factory, we see that this can cause considerable problems and delay things in the processing of the food products.
To the Director General for Industry, and I know that there are some programs with the regional development agencies, and they often fund, excuse me, on a smaller scale. They'll fund smaller processors, and I'm just wondering if there's data that you guys are helping processors on a smaller scale within Industry Canada.
Well, thank you, Chair, very much for the question from the member. Yes, indeed. And in fact, the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development has been quite active in this space over and above what the regional development agencies have been up to. Since 2017, I can report that ISED has committed up to $203 million to support innovation in Canada's value-added food and beverage processing sector through two avenues, one through the Strategic Innovation Fund and the other through the Innovation Canada's Superclusters initiative. And Mr. Seppi has already indicated two such investments in that regard. In 2018 as well, there was a project funded through the SIF into Maple Leaf Foods to build a world-class value-add poultry processing plant in a facility in London, Ontario, where CIF funded $20 million towards a $744 million project. And that project is expected to be one of the most technologically advanced poultry plants in the world, leading on food safety, environmental, and animal welfare processes and technologies. Last year, in 2018, we launched a competition under what we often refer to as Stream 4 of the CIF, a competition that was to spur on consortia coming together to bring different actors around the same ecosystem in such a way that smaller players across the country could interact with bigger players across the country with research components of the ecosystem and create value and hopefully garner new market share. There were 55 different applicants to that process. Two victors came from that. The first one was the Canadian Agri-Food Automation and Intelligence Network, and the other was the Canadian Food Innovators Network.
Thank you, Ms. Groeneweg. That's all the time we have, Monsieur Drouin. Thank you. Monsieur Perron, allez-y pour un...
Mr. Perron, please go ahead. You have 6 minutes. Hello, and thank you to the witnesses for being here with us. I'm going to continue along the same lines as my colleague Francis. With regard to decentralization, we've touched on the subject, and I'd like to go into more depth on that. During COVID, we said that we had a high capacity for processing, including in the meat sector, and that's fine. And we also saw that what are the dramatic effects on markets and on upstream producers when there's a plant where there's an outbreak of COVID, and we don't know in 4 or 5 years what will happen. We have to adapt our system. So are there any considerations in the department being carried out in that regard, and how can we try to diversify the supply? I'm talking about slaughtering of livestock, for example, to make room for some smaller players. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this question from the member. And I would like to mention that you no doubt are considering the situation of Alimel when at the end of March the Yamashish plant had to close, and they have 28,000 piglets processed every week. And of course, it's a plant which plays a key role in the processing chain for pork. And actually, when the program was brought in for processing assistance, one of the key aspects is a sector that was the meat processing sector. We knew that there were going to be investments necessary in that field, whether it be to increase the slaughtering capacity in order to deal with the backlog of livestock building up in the pork sector, which you're no doubt aware of, how it works like a pipeline. So one has to be in a position to either put the animals in stalls or cages and feed them while we wait to have the capacity to slaughter them, or have an animal welfare slaughtering. And that's why the program of $77.5 million placed particular emphasis and priority on requests coming from the meat processing sector. And you also spoke about the $77.5 million. Ms. Rude also talked about that earlier, and you seem to be saying that there are still some amounts being allocated. Is it to be understood that there's still money remaining in that fund right now? Because to us, it doesn't seem like very much as an amount. I would like to hear you on that. Yes, well, the program was, of course, a very popular program, and as a result, there's very little money left in it. It could be more some of the payouts that still have to be completed when it comes to that program. But essentially, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but the payouts, the overall envelope has been pretty much all used up. And the applications from the meat processing sector were given priority. There must have been quite a lot of applications that were not responded to. Can we expect an increase in the amount of aid? Because $75 million for all of Canada appears to us to be not a very big amount. So can it be expected to increase? Well, for the time being, there is no plan to increase it, to increase the budget envelope for that at the moment. Well then, you spoke about in your comments about interprovincial trade and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency loosening the rules. Could you explain in 15 or 20 seconds what exactly you're referring to? As you are aware, any product, any food product that enters into interprovincial trade normally has to be manufactured in a plant that is federally certified. So the measure that was taken by the CFIA, the agency, in collaboration with the provincial and territorial authorities, was to provide the possibility for exceptions to that rule to allow interprovincial trade for meats processed in provincial jurisdiction plants in order to avoid shortages in meats. However, in view of the fact that there were no meat shortages, then none of the provinces or territories applied to exercise that exception to the CFIA. They had the possibility to do so. The exception exists and is ready to be used if necessitated by the situation. And can we expect the possibility of establishing that on a regional basis, among other things, in regions of Quebec that have problems with livestock slaughtering that are nearby? For example, slaughterhouse that might be located in another province. If I understand what you're saying, it might be possible to make temporary arrangements on that basis. Yes, indeed, in view of the fact that it's a question of jurisdiction for interprovincial trade being a federal jurisdiction, and they have that obligation. But the illustration of the example of the work done by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency shows that in very specific cases, exceptions could be considered. And the case that you raise in particular in the boundary region, in the Outaouais region, I know that there's a lot of interest in that. And a few years ago, the CFIA was working on a pilot project to allow, well, in the National Capital Region, to make it possible to have this kind of arrangement on a temporary basis. Very well, Mr. Perron. It's almost finished. Okay, it's finished. So, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses who are appearing before us today. Yesterday I had a meeting with representatives from UFCW, which represents approximately 70,000 workers in processing plants across Canada. And I'm really happy to hear the acknowledgement that labor is a critical part of the puzzle. Indeed, it is. However, during the course of my meetings with UFCW, they very clearly raised some ongoing concerns they have for the safety of their members. And so if we do acknowledge the important part that labor plays, I just wanted to reiterate to members, to our witnesses, that UFCW did submit to Minister Bibeau's department 7 recommendations for best practices. And even with the timeline that we are on right now, and with all that we know from COVID-19, they found that in some cases, recommendations have been adopted and followed, but in many cases, they haven't. So my question through you, Mr. Chair, is with COVID numbers now on the rise again, and the vulnerability that we've already seen in our supply chain with some processing plants having to shut down, why is the CFIA not stepping in to enforce these consistently applied protocols to protect the health and safety of our workers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question from the member. I'll start by saying that CFIA is committed to protecting the health and safety of our employees, while, of course, maintaining and delivering critical inspection services. All facilities that we operate within are required to follow appropriate public health protocols and seek guidance from local public health authorities. We expect that the facilities are undertaking efforts to control any risks associated with workers who are ill, and this is in addition to their regular cleaning, sanitation, and other preventative controls. We've also asked our own employees to follow the health and safety protocols put in place at the establishments where they work. And CFI employees, including inspectors, who exhibit any signs or symptoms of illness are advised to contact their manager. We work very closely with the industry, the unions, and public health authorities to ensure that appropriate measures are put in place.
I appreciate the answer, Mr. Chair. However, it was made very clearly to me yesterday, from UFCW that many of these protocols are still being haphazardly applied. So I guess my question is, when can we expect a full compliance rate, and how is CFIA measuring the timeline for that level of enforcement?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question from the member. CFI's mandate in food establishments relates to food safety, and therefore we take the measures necessary to enforce the acts and regulations in relation to the safety of the food produced in the establishment. When it comes to compliance with public health measures, that is the responsibility of the operator, working in collaboration with local public health authorities and following the requirements of the Public Health Agency of Canada.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn now, because part of our study is looking, for the witnesses, part of our study is looking at the goal of increasing local capacity to protect food security. I've heard some very positive responses about the Local Food Infrastructure Fund, particularly how that's allowed small-scale primary producers to gain access to funding to invest in processing capacity, especially in small rural communities like the ones in my riding. I'd like to hear from our witnesses about the status of the Local Food Infrastructure Fund, what the uptake has been from it, and what is the department's plans for this particular fund going into the future? Are there plans to improve it, to increase it, and so on and so forth? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Like other programs, I cannot comment on whether in the future there will be an increase. But the member is absolutely right that it's a program that has been quite popular. In fact, from the initial amount, it was already increased once, the amount under that fund, and definitely we felt that there was a very good response to this program. I can also mention that, as I mentioned, 95% of all food processors establishments in Canada are small and medium-sized enterprises. And what we have seen in the evolution of the demand for food products across the country is a greater attachment to procuring from local producers, local food processors. And therefore, when we discuss with food processors and think about future programs or initiatives, being able to empower and help these processors to diversify their offer, to respond to the increased consumer demands. This is the aspect of raising the awareness about the importance of supporting local farmers is definitely one element of our consideration for future strategies.
So it's basically, it's done now. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. And now we'll start our second round. Mr. Steinley for 6 minutes. Go ahead. 5 minutes, sorry, 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Steinley.
Might need 6, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses that are here today. I really think as a government, there isn't anything more important than food security for the citizens of our country, and people on this witness list are important to ensure that. So my first question that goes to Mr. Seppi is, food is designated by Public Safety Canada one of Canada's 10 critical infrastructure sectors. Going into COVID-19, did Canada have an emergency response plan for the food system?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So yes, you're absolutely right that the food supply was a critical infrastructure, and there is under public safety there's a number of plans for the various sectors, and there's an emergency function that exists for food and water. But of course, it is more thinking of localized regional crisis that then requires a punctual intervention to procure food and water for a specific, whether it's an area affected by flooding, etc. Having a comprehensive plan to deal with the magnitude of the COVID-19 situation, I don't think any plans could have anticipated that. However, as you pointed out, it was key to designate workers in the food area essential from the get-go.
So a nationwide plan probably wasn't in place. I'm heard that there's a regional plan. So are there steps being taken now for another instance where there's a crisis like COVID-19 to have the food system prepared for such another disaster should it come?
Thank you. So since the beginning of the pandemic, we have established a number of mechanisms to be able to monitor and to engage with the various segments of the sectors in terms of addressing specific situation. For example, because the situation may vary from one sector to another. For example, we had immediately when the crisis started and we had the first closure of a meat processing plant, it was Olimel in Quebec in late March. We established plans with CFIA, with AFC, the Quebec Ministry of Agriculture, as well as Public Health Authority in Quebec, to have a crisis cell that was able to manage the situation associated with such a plan being shut down. We had the similar situations where there was outbreaks of COVID-19 among staff in large poultry plants in southwestern Ontario. So it is definitely acting quickly in terms of dealing with specific situation. And so far, we have indication that the sector appreciated these quick response. They had access immediately to senior officials in the government and ministers to address these concerns.
Thank you very much for that answer. I'm hoping there is a nationwide plan that's going to be looked at. I'm going to switch gears here now as I only have 5 minutes. I know there's some trade people that are here for the witnesses as well. So I'm just going to ask in general, how are we working to increase market access and ensure current trade agreements are implemented? Because once they're signed, there also is the implementation process, which improves predictability and creates further global opportunities for our country's oilseed processors. So I'm asking is, once we've signed trade deals as a country, who and are we working with global affairs to ensure that those agreements are implemented so that as our processors across the country can have more access for our world-class quality products and be able to obviously add to their bottom line?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And yes, I can assure you that, and as somebody that has been closely involved with the negotiations of free trade agreements over the previous year, I can tell you that the whole purpose of having these trade agreements is to make sure that they include strong enforceable provision on dispute settlement so that we can use all the levers at our disposal to advance our interests. And you're mentioning, for example, our RC products. And of course, a lot of the efforts right now of the Market Access Secretariat, which is part of a unit that is hosted in both CFI and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Our colleagues are coordinating actions with Global Affairs Canada at home and in post abroad to make sure that we go to the bottom of the alleged issues with the phytosanitary requirements or features of our products to address in a technical way these elements. But if we have to go to court and you exercise our rights, for example, at the World Trade Organization, we definitely work constantly with the industry to exercise these rights.
Thank you, Mr. Seppi. Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Mr. Lewis for 5 minutes. You're on mute. Okay, go ahead. Yep.
Sorry about that. I lost track of whose turn it was. So, I'm not sure. Thank you all for being here. I very much appreciate this. I was wondering if you could tell me what we've got interprovincial travel and trade as well, and that's something that gets brought up from time to time. That there are different credentials for federal and for provincial. What kind of steps are we taking to sort of work on that basis for cooperation for our food processing? I'm not sure who would want to be answering that question.
Perhaps I can, Mr. Chair, with your permission, start, but and perhaps my colleague at the Canadian Food and Expansion Agency may wish to add. I gave a number of examples where, through, for example, allowing exemptions from the otherwise requirement to have, if there's interprovincial trade in meat products, it has to be produced in federal plants. That's one venue. But I would like also to mention that there is an unprecedented level of federal, provincial, and territorial cooperation on regulatory issues underway. It has always been like that, but since the beginning of the pandemic, that collaboration is more intense than ever. And therefore, regulators are discussing concrete problems that may exist. To give an illustration, in Nova Scotia, there are meat plants that would like to be able to reach the level required for the federal establishments in order to be able to export outside the province. Well, these are issues that are being discussed between CFIA and the government of Nova Scotia.
I appreciate that. I know my colleague had mentioned previously about protecting our workers, and that's something that's important to all of us. Can you explain what kind of steps we've taken as a government to help some of the food processors and to make sure that their workers stay safe, so we can have a food supply that that we can keep food on the tables?
Yes. So my colleague, Madame Giuliano from CFIA, will probably have things to add. I would perhaps make a very quick point, is that in addition to what Teresa mentioned earlier, we are working closely with organizations such as the Canadian Meat Council, with the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, with the Public Health Agency of Canada, to ensure that operators have all the guidance, policies, understand what are the best practices to put in place to ensure the safety of workers, as Mr. McGregor was expressing, was indicating before. I don't know if Teresa, you want to add?
Thank you. Obviously, the CFI plays a critical role in providing service to food processing establishments. And because of that critical role, we make our maintaining the safety of our employees a #1 priority. Our staff work very closely with the industry in ensuring that we are putting in place the appropriate risk mitigation, including personal protective equipment, following public health guidelines, and working closely with the establishment to minimize any unnecessary physical contact.
Thank you. And you know what? Maybe I can stay with the CFI questions, because we have to also make sure that our inspectors themselves are protected and safe. So what kind of challenges did we have, especially in the beginning of this pandemic, to make sure that the very inspectors can get their jobs done, but they remain safe as well?
I think in the early days of the pandemic, one of the early challenges was ensuring that we had an adequate supply of personal protective equipment. And so as soon as the public health guidance on the provision of non-medical masks evolved, we acted immediately to ensure that our frontline staff had access to the appropriate personal protective equipment, including face masks, face shields, visors, wipes, as required. We also took measures to ensure that our staff were delivering critical services in person only when required, and to deliver services remotely where that was feasible. And so those are some of the measures that we've taken to protect the safety of our staff. We've also, through an investment that was made in the agency of $20 million, have used those funds to hire emergency staff, or do some emergency staffing, to bring in previously retired inspectors, to work with the provinces to increase inspection capacity, all of that with the intent of reducing pressure on the current workforce to make sure that we can continue to deliver those critical services.
Thank you, Ms. Louis-Anneau, and thank you, Mr. Lewis. And now, maintenant, Monsieur Perron, 2 minutes.
And now, Mr. Perron, 2.5 minutes, please. I would like to come back to the emergency fund for processing. Of course, the amounts were insufficient. Even I have some small processors who have contacted me who got the answer that the fund was exhausted, and vague answers from officials who said they could not guarantee that there was any money, whereas sometimes the businesses were beginning to invest. Do you not think that it would be very advisable to increase the amount of investment? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Of course, this is a political question to be addressed to the minister. I understand that the funds have been exhausted and that the funds have not been filled, so we need more money. Fine. I'll turn to something else. The people from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, there are some producers in a UPA convention where a cheese producer who came up to the microphone and said that she herself had found that there were samples of 23 foreign cheeses that did not comply with 200 inspection points. And the answer given to her was, and Ms. Lamontagne was there, and concerning the standards, my question is, if we have trouble ensuring that the standards are respected, let's understand one another. If we want to have processors here that are dynamic and have a strong presence, then there have to be rules that are fair in comparison to what comes in from outside the country. Do you have a game plan to perhaps increase the resources applied when you see that kind of problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to answer that question from the member. First, I'd like to begin by stating that the Safe Food for Canadians Act and regulations requires that imported food must meet all the same regulatory requirements as food that's produced in Canada. And so when it comes to imports, all imported products are treated equally as they would be treated for those that are produced and sold in Canada. And the CFIA undertakes various activities to ensure compliance of imported products before they leave their countries. We also work at the border very closely with CBSA to ensure that products entering Canada meet all Canadian requirements. And then when they arrive in Canada, we do engage in post-border activities. We do testing, we do follow-up compliance and enforcement activities to make sure that those products meet all Canadian requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Switch. And now to Mr. McGregor for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. McGregor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to again revisit the issue of our meat processing capacity, because this is, of course, has been a huge topic for the committee. We've heard a lot of reports from many witnesses about, how the overconcentration of meat processing capacity in Canada has while been very efficient in the past, has certainly been one of our weak links. I have a specific question. Back in August, in the province of Ontario, it was reported that the old Riding Regency meat plant had been going through its final inspection, and I think the plant is being renamed. It's under True Harvest Meats. The beef farmers of Ontario were quite excited about this because, of course, they are suffering from a lack of meat processing capacity in Ontario. But we are now in November, and we still have yet to hear from the CFIA as to whether this plant is going to restart. Given the situation we find ourselves in, is the CFIA able to comment on this specific application? And can we expect some news soon on it? Because I know a lot of farmers would like to hear some good news on that front.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question from the member. I'm afraid I can't comment specifically on the application itself. When an operator chooses to make an application for a license, that's a business decision on behalf of the operator, and we will assess those license applications on a case-by-case basis. So I can tell you that we have a process in place, that we stand ready to work with the operators as those license applications come forward.
Thank you, Chair. Where am I at with time?
You're 35 seconds.
Okay, just very quickly, does the federal government regard the concentration of meat plants, like the old model that we operate under, as a threat to food security? And is it part of its strategic plan going forward? Is it going to be a big part of trying to diversify those operations?
Perhaps I can try to respond very quickly. So we have it varies from one sector to another, and under the Emergency Processing Fund, we had one stream that was specifically to address imbalances on the regional level. So that's one element that is on our radar.
Thank you, Mr. Seppi. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for the first hour. I want to thank the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, Ms. Luliano and Ms. Tammy Suituka, and also from Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food, Mr. Warren Goodlett and Mr. Frederic Seppi, Marco Vellicenti, and also from Department of Industry, Cheryl Groeneweg. I want to thank you all for updating us on the situation in the processing food sector in Canada, and also for your hard work in keeping Canadian food and Canadian people safe. Thank you so much, and we shall have a small break to bring in the new panel. So we'll break for a few minutes, and the clerk will let us know when we're ready. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you. this panel. I'd like to welcome from the Dean's Council, Agriculture and Agri-Food and Veterinary Medicine.
Mr. Chair, you're on mute. Mr. Chair, you're still on mute.
Okay. Am I good? You hear me now? Sorry about that. So welcome to the second hour, to the second panel for our study on processing. With us in the second panel, we have Dean's Council, Agriculture, Food, and Veterinary Medicine, Martin Scanlon, Dean of Faculty of Agriculture and Food Sciences, University of Manitoba. Also, Christine Théoret, Dean, Faculté de Médecine Vétérinaire.
Dean of the University of Montreal, Faculty of Veterinary Medicine.
Canada, Michel Graydon, Chief Executive Officer, et de la Société des Pâques d'Engraisse.
And from Beef Quebec, Jean-Sébastien Gascon, Executive Director for Quebec. So you each have 7.5 minutes for your introduction, if you would like to begin.
Dean's Council, Agriculture and Food and Veterinary Medicine, you have 7.5 minutes to do your opening statement. You can split your time, or you can do it all. One can do it the whole 7.5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here today on behalf of the Dean's Council on and actually to discuss food processing in Canada, the topic that's even more critical in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. On behalf of after a brief introduction to the Dean's Council Agriculture, Food and Veterinary Medicine faculties, we wish to address two things. The first is the importance of innovation and innovation training for building an internationally competitive food processing sector. And secondly, the importance of taking an integrated approach to the continuum that is environmental health, animal health, and human health, because Canada's food processing industry is an integral part of that continuum. So the Dean's Council is a pan-Canadian network of 8 agricultural faculties and 5 veterinary colleges for training, research, and knowledge translation. And it's really a core to the national ecosystem in food, agriculture, and health. And indeed, as one of the world's most advanced producers of food, Canada does have a leadership role to play in meeting the expanding requirement of the globe for quality nutrition. So as a result, Canada's communities and trading partners must have confidence in the integrity, resilience, and safety of our food system. And it's important to emphasize that the Dean's Council faculties not only hold the talent, but they're also responsible for developing the talent and the knowledge that will enable the tremendous economic and export growth potential of Canada's agri-food sector to be realized. Our faculties also contribute to public confidence in the integrity and safety of Canada's food system, and they also shield it, and potentially so also our healthcare system, from future infectious disease incursions, food safety threats, and environmental risks. About a year ago, the Dean's Council worked with Industry, Science and Economic Development Canada to produce a report examining the path to growth for Canada's food and beverage processing sector. And more specifically, ISED asked us, how could the Dean's Council help cultivate a skilled, innovation-minded workforce? And how could we also marshal the enormous research and development capacity within our faculties to address the short, medium, and long-term goals of a transformed food sector? So in the report to ISED Canada, we made various recommendations that our analysis showed was necessary for attracting a diverse set of students to our faculties. And that way we could ensure that there was a broad range of ideas and creative solutions to both ingredient and process innovations. And one recommendation was the need for renewal of core infrastructure that is absolutely vital for student training as well as for research. And it's worth noting that hundreds of scientists and indeed thousands of students in our faculties conduct internationally recognized research that fuels ingredient innovation for Canada's crop and livestock. And they also devise process science innovations for retooling Canada's small to medium-sized enterprises. And as you're likely aware, it's these SMEs that dominate Canada's food processing landscape. When we did this, though, as Deans, we recognized that we couldn't take a narrow perspective on just renewal of infrastructure for the food process sector, because consumer choice and confidence in food is increasingly driven by considerations of this important lifeline between human health, animal health, plant health, and environmental health. And the intimacy of this lifeline is recognized through a One Health concept, a concept that's been endorsed by the World Health Organization and the Food and Agricultural Organization as the way to tackle zoonotic disease threats. So renewal of the research, innovation, and training capacity in our veterinary and agriculture facilities must be a priority if we're realistic in our aspirations to turn natural capital through our human capital into an international leadership position for our agri-food industry. So an investment in two unique and cutting-edge but highly connected national initiatives will provide the evidence that Canada is willing to protect its borders and its communities from current and future infectious diseases and food safety threats. The investment will also fundamentally strengthen Canada's economic recovery from this pandemic and also prepare us for future pandemics. The first of these investments, Growing Canada, is directed to training and research capacity in sustainable ag and food processing. This will integrate the academic innovation that's spread across the country for the prospering of Canada's agriculture and food processing sectors. And the second, One Health Canada, will integrate science and data-driven approaches to human, animal, environmental health risks. And these are risks that have been starkly evident over the past year, but it will also propose solutions to these threats. So these two initiatives are interconnected and interdependent, and both are vital elements for the economic and social progress of a growing agri-food sector. So as Monsieur Seppi had talked earlier on, this is warranted not only by the size of the industry, its importance to our national economy, but also its effect on the employment sector. And one point that Mr. Seppi emphasized is the fact that both of these metrics, the employment and the size of the sector, are growing faster in the agri-food sector than in other sectors in the economy. So in closing, the Dean's Council would emphasize one salutary lesson from COVID. We cannot take our food system for granted. So we ask you to use the Dean's Council as a valuable resource for both building talent and knowledge creation for the agri-food sector. And it's this innovation-focused perspective on the development of the tools and the talent in agri-food and veterinary science that will sustainably fashion the long-term economic and social benefits of Canada's agri-food system. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scanlon. And now from the Food, Health and Consumer Products, 7.5 minutes. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Michael Graydon, Chief Executive Officer of Food, Health and Consumer Products of Canada, the leading voice of Canada's largest manufacturer employers. Food, health and consumer products sector employs more than 350,000 Canadians across businesses of all sizes that manufacture and distribute the safe, high-quality products that are at the heart of healthy homes, healthy communities, and a healthy Canada. We transform Canada's agricultural riches into value-added finished goods that feed families here at home and around the world. We work closely with Canadian farmers and are the single largest employer in rural Canada, serving as a critical link between rural and urban communities. We are present in every region across the country, providing good paying jobs, strengthening communities, and adding more than $39.9 billion to the economy each year. Key initiatives like the National Food Policy, the Agri-Food Economic Strategy Table, and the Food Processing Industry Roundtable have all recognized the critical importance of the agri-food industry, and in particular, the potential for value-added food manufacturing to make Canada a global leader in food production and innovation. Our sector is a necessary engine for jobs, growth, and self-reliance. Today, I'll focus on two of the top constraints facing the Canadian food manufacturing industry. First, a chronic and growing labor shortage that has left 1 in 10 job vacancies in our sector unfilled. And second, unfair practices from grocery retail giants that harm Canadian farmers, grocery suppliers, and consumers. For Canada to be an attractive destination for investment, we must be able to attract and retain workers. Yet labor gaps continue to worsen for food manufacturers with nearly 28,000 job vacancies. Jobs in our sector pay well and should be in demand. Hourly wages for food manufacturers have increased by 16% compared to the previous year, with an average wage of $24 an hour. That's 60% higher than the highest provincial minimum wage. Food manufacturers have also stepped up to invest heavily in keeping workers safe through the COVID-19 crisis, provide incentives to workers, and increase employee engagement and appreciation incentives. Despite our efforts, labor challenges persist, and we ask the government to incentivize unemployed Canadians to take these jobs, continue to help ensure predictable and timely access to workers outside of Canada to fill the domestic labor gap, and provide support and incentives for companies to invest in automation, and convene a roundtable with food manufacturers to discuss these labor challenges and work together towards solutions. If Canada truly prioritizes jobs and growth, it must also urgently correct the second constraint I'd like to raise today, unfair practices by a handful of powerful grocery retail giants. Just 5 grocery retailers control more than 80% of Canada's grocery and drug stores, creating a significant power imbalance over manufacturers, farmers, suppliers, and small retailers and consumers. Some grocery retail giants have exploited this power to impose unfair and unethical business practices that hurt everyone else who grows, makes, buys, or sells food and other essential products. For far too long, some large grocery retailers have used farmers and suppliers as a piggy bank, imposing arbitrary fees, raising costs, and paying suppliers less than they are owed, all while charging shoppers more and more. The consequences are severe. When farmers and suppliers are forced to pay retail giants bills, they struggle to pay their own and must cut back on innovating new products, investing in new facilities, and creating new jobs. Made in Canada food becomes more expensive and our food system weakens. Consumers have fewer, more expensive choices, workers lose job opportunities, and Canada is already losing investment to more competitive countries. Now, in the midst of the ongoing pandemic, companies like Loblaws and Walmart have doubled down on this bullying behavior, forcing suppliers to fund retailers' expansion, all while making record profits. New fees imposed by Walmart and Loblaw alone cost suppliers an estimated $1 billion a year, bringing the total cost of getting and keeping products on store shelves to an estimate of $6 billion a year with no tangible benefit to the suppliers or to consumers. Canada's grocery giants may control the majority of stores and shelves in the country, but it's time we all remember there would be nothing to sell without food and grocery suppliers. Proven models such as the UK's Grocery Supply Code of Practice with a dedicated enforcement agency have shown significant success in restoring balance and fairness to the relationship between grocery retailers and the suppliers while keeping food cost inflation low. A recent statutory review confirmed the UK code has improved communication, collaboration, and efficiency while maintaining flexibility in the food supply chain. It resulted in clear benefits for all stakeholders. The code results prove that strong oversight and good governance are good for business and good for consumers. We are calling on the provinces and territories to lead the way in implementing an enforceable code of conduct similar to the UK model that holds large grocery retailers accountable for fair treatment of suppliers. We also urge the federal government's leadership to develop a common framework that would be used by provinces and territories to avoid a patchwork approach of various codes of conduct. It is long past time for governments to take seriously the negative consequences of unfair practices by Canada's grocery giants. Leaders across the supply chain agree failing to do so will threaten food security in this country, weaken our essential supply chains, hurt consumers, and jeopardize Canadian growth, jobs, and COVID-19 recovery. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graydon. Et maintenant, Monsieur Jean-Sébastien Gascon.
Now, Mr. Jean-Sébastien Gascon, you have 7.5 minutes. Thank you, Parliamentarian. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor, and I'm quite excited about it. I like the level of reflection here. It's the first time I've been invited and collaborated at the federal level, so it's really very interesting for me. I hope that my presentation will interest you in a certain sense. I wasn't entirely sure. Globalization places Quebec beef production in competition with the rest of the world. It's an unstable trade area that is highly complex and risky. Why is processing concentrated in the hands of a few giants? I'll give you an idea of a few of the examples that illustrate this. There's a great deal of volatility in prices, and not very many companies survive the beef market. And with its ups and downs, there are low costs, for example, in U.S., Mexico, and Brazil, and regulation, lacks reciprocity. We import beef raised at lower standards than what is produced in Quebec, both for health, animal well-being, and environment. The same thing in Canada. A number of countries support their processing. Beef Quebec is an innovative initiative, and the sales double every 4 to 6 months, and we hope to maintain this pace for the next 2 years. How can the government support the Beef Quebec program in order to take advantage of opportunities? It's based on 4 keys to aim at excellence and be among the best in the world. If government assistance, as announced today in Quebec, and I pasted that, but there are 4 major challenges here. Consumers, first of all, to better respond to consumer demands because they're the final arbiter of our project. Coordination is the second challenge. Ensure better vertical coordination from the farm to the plate because collaboration between the links of the chain enables us to improve our productivity, agility, and Mr. Graydon referred to this earlier, the difficulties with the giants in the grocery sector. Productivity, undertake greater productivity for businesses because if we want to relaunch the economy, we need better value and better profitability for all companies, particularly processors, abattoirs, and producers. We see this in Canada right now. There is no real recovery in beef. It's still the case in Quebec. And in terms of competitivity, the 4th key, increase the competitiveness of the business environment, innovate to better manage risks, better regulate, develop the labor force, foster research, investment, and innovation. Government support is an essential force to compensate global disparities. Clearly, we're not on an equal playing field around the world. The needs are clearly expressed to accelerate the Beef Quebec Partners program. I think if you look at the program, you'll see that we have essentially copied the same main approaches as the Canadian program, all the challenges of a program like this to try to make it work on a large scale. And all the partners have it in their interest for it to work. So I'd like to say a few words about productivity. Productivity is what needs the most investment. There's going to be no recovery of production in Quebec without an increase in business productivity. I am convinced that the same challenge exists throughout Canada among producers. Beef Quebec has given itself an objective to increase this profitability by 6% in production in a 2021 pilot project by being more productive, producing greater value at a lower cost, which means that we have to innovate to better sell and better produce. This is how we will be able to get producers to invest to produce more. When it comes to the slaughterhouses and the processors. We can now process and transform our weak links into strengths so that we have a number of abattoirs under federal inspection, and some of them are halted or being used for other purposes than beef because they're not able to get through. So we have equipment under provincial inspection and equipment that during the pandemic we saw that there was a strong capacity for strategic slaughtering, and if we leave it alone, we can't do it. We have to have a radical technological turnaround. Technology enables us to manage the complexity of projects such as beef and enables us to be more productive. We have to work now to have a technological change that is radical in terms of production and processing, automate, robotize, 4.0 blockchain. We need to focus on innovation. If not, we're not going to be on an equal playing field, and we need a blockchain development project that will change our mode of production, and we need the government to be able to make this field a technology leader that will rival the giants that dominate this industry. You've probably already seen the robots that are coming in the high-speed plants in 5 years. If we're not on board with that, we will be left out. And I think that right now there are 2 earthquakes occurring in processing that we have to see coming and that we have to understand. The first of these is technology. I think that I've expressed this quite well. There's a comet. If we don't change things now, then in 5 years we'll have missed the boat. The second one was revealed through the pandemic. It's been for a number of years that we've had an undercapacity for slaughtering in North America. And in Business Insider, there was a theory that big beef may be over because of small-scale butchers in the pandemic.
The nature of America's meat supply chain, as tens of thousands of meat industry workers fell sick and hundreds died. Small-scale farms have seen a huge spike in demand, and consumers search for alternative meat sources. Right now, 80% of U.S. beef market is controlled by 4 huge meat producers, and they're the target of Justice Department antitrust investigation.
Right now, there is a context that is coming out. We have an undercapacity in slaughtering, and we have a technological shift coming and also a shift on the part of the consumer. Consumers are asking more questions. They want to know things. They're ready to do more. We have to be able to respond to the demand. For a number of years, we had a system for beef where we were producing a commodity. Perhaps that era is ending in a sense. This is where we have to go back to the strategic points: the consumer, productivity, vertical coordination, and competitiveness. My personal goal is to become the Cirque du Soleil of beef in North America and to go ahead with an expression in marketing that we call the blue ocean. So this is what we are being able to succeed in Boeuf Quebec, and we hope we'll be able to surprise you. Of course, conversations like the one today, to me, it's very exciting to be with the leaders of the industry in that, but I think that we have to. Thank you, Mr. Gascon. We're out of time now, so you can also add more when the questions are asked.
And Mr. Epp for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Epp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to begin by thanking all the witnesses for their testimony. I'd like to focus my questions on one of the barriers that was identified to increasing processing capacity, namely that of retailer concentration, which is obviously has been in the news recently. And so through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to direct some questions to Mr. Graydon. Thank you for your testimony, as well as thank you very much for the very comprehensive briefing note that covered almost all of the questions that I had prepared. I'd like to begin actually at the end of the value chain with the consumer. Yesterday, StatsCan published the last monthly report. The CPI was up again 0.7%. It's up 1% apart from gasoline, and that's being led by rising food prices. So how is the consumer being affected by these trade relationships? How is it possible that the consumer can benefit from the behaviors in the industry if those are corrected between the suppliers and farmers to the manufacturers and processors? They all receive a fairer price for their product. Won't that raise prices to consumers?
Mr. Grader, okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry. I don't believe so. In the work that we've done in analyzing the success of the code in the UK, is that consumer pricing actually went down. We're looking at 3 to 5% food inflation in Canada. In the UK, they're looking at below 1%. And what happens is it's a cultural transition where you look from farm gate to shelf collectively and collaboratively to identify efficiencies that can be had and can be translated into cost benefit for the consumer. If we have to continue to pay these outrageous fees to the retailers, then unfortunately those are the sort of things that do eventually get passed on to the consumer, because we just cannot absorb those cost increases any longer.
Thank you. Some retailers are actually saying that relative to the onset of COVID back earlier this year, that things are almost back to normal now. Yet, of course, the data we're seeing, the infection rates are rising, that we're in the middle of a second wave, but that actually may be more traumatic than the first. With the recent announcements of record profits by several of the major retailers and the costs that are being shoved downstream to the suppliers, as well as the loss of pandemic pay to retail workers, couple, all these capital expansion costs being pushed down, what are the consequences of this dynamic? Is there actually, our goal here is actually an increase of processing capacity in Canada. That's the direction of the Barton report. That's the goal of this study. Is there actually a risk of contraction? And if so, what could be the implications to rural Canada?
Yeah, there's major opportunities for contraction, unfortunately. 90% of the food manufacturers in this country are small to medium enterprises that employ less than 100 people. And they do not have the financial flexibility to be able to continue in this environment. So they're vulnerable. They're running at sometimes less than 3% margin. So they are very vulnerable, and their abilities to be able to sustain business is going to be very difficult. The large multinationals have other options. They have a much broader portfolio to work with, a lot more power to negotiate. And quite honestly, they have production options, which fundamentally is moving or transitioning their manufacturing to the United States and using Canada as a distribution center. What happens to agriculture is they lose their key business connection. In the province of Ontario, our industry takes over 60% of the agricultural output, and on average across Canada, 50%. All of a sudden, you lose those markets, you lose that opportunity within 100 kilometers of your farm to be able to process that. You become a purveyor of commodities. And I think the margins and the impact on the farm and agriculture will be significant. It'll be a cascading effect, and there'll be lost jobs, and I think lost profitability and success and sustainability of the strong agriculture that we're very proud of here in this country.
Thank you. In some recent discussions that I've had with processors, their major concern has been, one of them identified the fines, both for late and short delivery, as well as the new fees. One of them is facing, as of January the 4th, another 1.3% cost on all volumes being supplied to a major retailer. What are the effects? And your briefing note was extensive and actually listed a litany of unfair practices. Appreciate that. What is the collateral impact on the independent grocers? They're often the only grocers in rural Canada. Can you list, what's the result of this power imbalance on them? And a second corollary to that, in your opinion, is it necessary or a necessary role of government to address this power imbalance? Is a Canadian study to further this necessary, or can we transfer the findings of the UK and Australian studies?
I think we can transfer the UK studies, but I think we need to take a made in Canada approach to it as well. The independent grocers are impacted quite significantly, and the knock-on effect to the consumer is food security in certain parts of the country, where the independent is in fact the only solution in regards to grocery retail. And if they are negatively impacted, do not have the ability to get the ample allotments of product, then the consumers in those markets end up in a grocery desert. So these fines are impactful, because if a manufacturer is dealing with Walmart or Loblaws and they aren't able to fulfill to the order, then sometimes the fine itself is greater than the margin that they make on the order itself. So what happens is they have to make allocation decisions. Do I send to Walmart and Loblaws or the large grocer and avoid the fine and minimize the amount. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Graydon. Sorry, we're out of time. And now, Mr. Blois for 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start by thanking all the witnesses for their testimony. I'll start with Mr. Graydon. You mentioned during your remarks we need to be more competitive versus other countries internationally. What does that look like? And I don't mean to go, I want to ask a number of questions. So what does that look like in terms of more competitive?
Exercising and utilizing the export capacity that we have. The Barton report, I think, was, a wonderful piece of work that identified the opportunity that exists for agri-food and agri-food processing.
You mentioned the code of conduct in the United Kingdom, and look, this is something I'm hearing from my agriculture stakeholders in Nova Scotia as well. I don't know if we actually get to making the connection that the code of conduct in the UK led to greater processing capability. Is that something that actually happened, that the UK saw a rise in terms of its processing capability as a result of this code of conduct, or just perhaps less inflation on its products?
No, it had a very marked impact in regards to manufacturer profitability, which they re-engaged back into capital investment, as did for retail, as it did for consumer price deflation.
And you might have this data on hand, you might not, in terms of where Canada ranks internationally in terms of some of its margins between its processors that are selling into retailers. Where do we rank in terms of our percentage of margins versus perhaps other jurisdictions, particularly in Europe? Because it seems that Europe is kind of on the cutting edge of automation and kind of that advanced processing in the agri-food sector.
Canada is one of the most expensive countries in the world to do business. When the combination of the retailer consolidation and other things, the margin performance in this country is at near the bottom.
You mentioned obviously cost to do business. Some of that can be, of course, tied to retailers and the concentration you've alluded to during your remarks. Is some of this also tied to regulatory harmonization and the fact that there might be other jurisdictions in the world that are doing better job on regulatory harmony? Sorry.
Yeah, regulatory burden is a challenge. There's no question about it. It's sort of a it's been very helpful in regards to food safety, but there are many, many regulations that are adding significant cost, and harmonization, especially in North America, would be very, very helpful.
I want to ask you, you mentioned labor and you talked about the importance and that we do have a chronic labor challenge. For example, in my riding of Kings Hants, we have Apple Valley Foods, which is Sarsfield family run, one of the largest pie manufacturers in North America. He certainly has talked about the challenges that they faced. How do we encourage more automation? Because I think, at least anecdotally, Canada is behind other jurisdictions in the world in terms of actually using artificial intelligence or automation in terms of its food processing, not only as a way to prove better efficiency, but to make sure that chronic labor gap can be satisfied through some of these techniques.
Well, we need to improve the profitability of the industry so that capital investment can be made back into automation, which is going to be, I think, very important for the continued success. And any programs that the government can do to assist the industry with regards to that are going to be very much welcome.
My last question, obviously I mentioned I'm from Nova Scotia, a member of parliament in this area. We have seen a big deindustrialization as economies of scale, and we're looking to be obviously be globally competitive. I know you represent a whole vast variety of different stakeholders. Any suggestion or balance about how government finds the way forward to improve regional capacity, but also understand that there still has to be some level of business efficacy and profitability or sustainability, and government can't be providing that regional capacity in all cases if it doesn't still make business sense. Do you have any recommendations or any thoughts from your stakeholders in terms of regional capacity?
Yeah, I think regional capacity works very much in favor of our industry. Land costs in Nova Scotia in regards to building a plant are a lot different than they are in Toronto, Ontario. So I think if government can work to create and remove some of the barriers and inhibitors of success, like consolidation of retail and some of the significant challenges we have with regulations, then the industry is prepared to invest and in many cases to diversify regionally across the country and follow where the labor pools are, where the agriculture is, and where the best opportunity for cost of running your businesses resides.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to go to Mr. Gascon, and mon français c'est amélioré, mais c'est
My French has improved, but it's not perfect, so my question will be in English now.
I'll go back to English. My question, when I did research on your organization, it's about 70 family farms. You mentioned about trying those 4 competitive mechanisms. Are you finding that consumer trends are changing, or is it still really based on price? And despite the fact that you're trying to create a quality product with those margins, how do you compete against where many consumers are still based on their bottom line and the affordability of the product?
The more we advance in this project, actually, est-ce que je réponds en français ou...
Shall I answer in French or in English?
Answer in French? Okay. Plus on rentre dans...
The more we go into that project, the more we see that margins throughout the sector are, smaller. With all these little margins added in the sector, it's becoming tighter and tighter, and we're able to bring the consumer prices closer to the competition. So if we make the margins narrower. So with vertical coordination, if we have the actors work together, it's possible to bring our price closer to a price that is almost a commodity price. So then we have a choice of competing as a commodity or creating additional value. It's a wonderful choice now, except that the problem with it is that nobody gives anyone gifts in this industry. So I use the same plan as Canada Beef, but it has to be done properly. Thank you, Mr. Gascon. That's all the time we have. Mr. Perron, please go ahead. You have 6 minutes. Yes, I'll let Mr. Gascon finish it. I found that answer interesting. Did you finish? Well, I think the key is to be able to get people to work together. And one of the Canada Beef representatives said last year that in beef, I always take that's my sector as an example, but maybe it can apply elsewhere. The beef sector has never been so destructured. It's a challenge to get people to work together, but that's the key. You seem to have a number of solutions in mind. You seem to be dynamic, and I think that the development of your organization shows that. If you need specific measures that are concrete, what can the federal government do to help you? What do you need in order to remove obstacles? Actually, there's a whole idea of working on removing obstacles, the regulations, the labor force, and so on. But I think that what's urgent for me now, in my opinion, is really to do with the technology, to be able to make the technological shift. If we miss that shift, if there are no massive investments, then we have to be able to make that technological shift. I think that the drama, we'll see the results in 5 years, actually. That's my main concern. But regulatory things, there's also a cleanup to be done in regulatory affairs as well. That's fine. That means that ultimately you're saying that there's not enough investment in research and development in the country. But when you tell me that in terms of regulatory things to do, the first regulation you would remove or the first thing you would like to make more flexible, what would it be? Well, of course, on the value of the carcass right now in Canada, this goes back to the mad cow disease as a measure where currently we're able to get a certain value close to what the Americans can get, but just on the other side of the border costs them less, and they're able to develop the value of it better. So it's urgent to work on that. All right, so it's a reciprocity of standards you're asking for. Exactly. When it comes to research and development, Ms. Théoret, I would like to hear what you have to say about what Mr. Gascon said. Do you think that the federal government is doing enough now? Would we need a massive investment program? Microphone, please. The microphone is still off. It's not working, or whatever. Anyway. Well then, Mr. Scanlon. If you can answer the question, please.
May I?
Yes, but in English, if you don't mind. Yes, absolutely. We have translation. It's fine.
Yeah, certainly there is a need for investment. I mean, Mr. Graydon made the case that there needs to be better margins on manufactured foods in order that this investment can occur. So we would say that there needs to be this investment not only in the food processing innovation, so some of the technologies that Mr. Gascon's mentioned, but also in the area of investment in people. Because if people do not have an appreciation of the massive strides that have been made in technology, then they're not going to be the innovation leaders in that sector in 5, 10, or 15 years ahead. So it's at two levels, right in the plant itself for the innovation to make them more efficient and more food safe, but also to actually help out with the personnel and their capacity to deliver on innovation.
Merci.
Thank you. Returning to Mr. Gascon, when you talked about the MRS standard that is not the same, the change that is necessary is what? What are you asking for? What's the difference? Well, there's the way in which the carcasses are dealt with. There are parts that can be used in Canada. There are costs for disposal of certain parts of the carcass that cannot be used, so we lose in terms of the yield. So we're dealing with very narrow margins between making money or losing money, and every 1/3 of 1% counts on a carcass in order to be able to be competitive. So this is one of the most obvious ones. Perhaps I could turn back and do some more writing and put together a series of proposals, but this is one very simple one because it doesn't make sense. So if you have any concrete proposals, that's the purpose of the committee's work. So if you could provide that to us, we would highly appreciate it. It's very much appreciated. You talked about the technology issue, and I've questioned the people from the universities, but for businesses, what could help you investing more federal credits or direct investment? I believe that costs are going to be huge. I think that the costs will be high, and what's happening right now is what we see in a number of industries. Those who are doing the shift are getting ahead in productivity of those who don't. So I don't have a crystal ball, but those who are able to bring it into their plants, and somebody who makes a 280-gram steak, they're working at a very quickly. It's a high-speed production, and put a butcher beside them, and you'll see. If you want to have well-paid jobs, there's a whole dynamic right now. We have to do the digital turnaround, or the technology turnaround. So I don't know who can really provide the assistance. People need to provide assistance to the plants. The plants have to be assisted in order to be able to make the technology shift. I'd like to hear you on your second point, the undercapacity of slaughtering in the regions. We don't have much time left, but can you explain that a bit, what you would need? Well, you saw there are a few major players that have focused on the idea of paying the lowest possible price for raw material, and everyone is investing to rebuild their slaughtering capacity in North America, but the big players are making a huge margin right now. Thank you, Mr. Gascon. We're out of time. Mr. McGregor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would also like to follow my colleagues in thanking our witnesses for appearing before the committee. Your testimony is going to be very helpful in the formulation of our report. You know, at this committee, we've talked a lot in previous meetings about the powerhouse that Canada is when it comes to exports. But I want to swing the pendulum back to our local food capacity. You know, I represent a riding on Vancouver Island, and it's estimated that here on Vancouver Island, we have probably about a 3-day supply of fresh food. So if something catastrophic were to happen to supply chains, we would be feeling quite the pinch. And I know there are many communities across Canada that would feel the same kind of pressures. It's a bit of an irony that we are a huge food producer, but we still have many examples of food insecurity across Canada. So maybe Professor Scanlon, I'll start with you because I know you've written on this topic, and I really appreciated your remarks on resiliency. That's a theme that I really identify with. You know, do you have any thoughts to maybe add to the committee, to provide to the committee on how we build up that kind of resiliency, how we establish conditions, whether it's through programs like the Local Food Infrastructure Fund, to improve or increase the capacity and the resiliency of smaller communities to have that kind of food security?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McGregor. I agree. I mean, as Dr. Yada from UBC and myself and Dr. Van Ecker from Ontario Agricultural College talked about, we do need to build in this resilience with small, what are called boutique food processing operations, so that there is this ability where you have fractured supply chains. Didn't happen much, but it is a real potential in terms of the efficiencies driving these long supply chains. When they do fracture, you do put certainly urban populations at risk of food insecurity. So I don't know really. I mean, certainly there needs to be both the element of people who are prepared to take the risk, but then the support for them, both from an investment perspective, so government support for their own investments, but also then a supportive environment, a supportive innovation ecosystem. So it takes a number of players, colleges, universities, investment opportunities, and of course, provincial and federal governments as well.
Thank you. Mr. Graydon, maybe I'll ask you to chime in. I did make mention of that program, the Local Food Infrastructure Fund, because often, like what I hear in communities like mine is that there's a willingness to start up in the market, but they lack the capital to either purchase the infrastructure or build it. So we have a lot of primary food producers who would love to set up a cooperative, but they need access to a commercial kitchen or a commercial canning facility. Can you lend any thoughts to how important those targeted types of investments are, and do we need to see more funding put in by the federal government into programs like the Local Food Infrastructure Fund? Like, have any of your small scale members expressed an interest, or do they see value in those types of products or programs to expand their operations?
No, many do. And, you know, I think there's a lot of support for it. I don't know that it's all about government funding. I will tell you that the food manufacturing processing, especially at the small to medium level, is seen as very high risk within the banking community. So it's very hard to get the capital that they require to make the investments. So it then requires government to sort of step in and support them. But many of the larger organizations that are looking, especially for unique products that are being developed in secondary markets, coming in and making the capital investments to support them and take a sort of capital position within the company, but not necessarily taking it over. So there are opportunities. I think we're looking for them where we can.
Thank you very much for that. Professor Scanlon, I'll just turn to you for my last question. In the previous parliament, this committee did a study on technology and innovation, and one of the things we heard repeatedly when we're doing our tour across Canada and from witnesses was the regulatory challenges. We do have a lot of appreciation from our worldwide customers on the extremely strict standards on our food supply and food safety. But sometimes, you have producers complain about the onerous requirements that CFIA has. Do you have any thing that you can contribute to the committee about like how we strike that appropriate regulatory approach so that people both have confidence in our food supply and the high safety standards, but we're not having as much red tape in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think red tape or regulations are important, as you say, to assure that food safety. But part of it is this education component of what are those innovations like in flow cytometry, online tools that can be used to automatically detect food safety issues rather than some of the old technologies that are proven and which our regulations are built around. So there has to be this matching of using the regulations as they are at the moment effectively, but also being prospective in what innovations can overturn those regulations and in turn help innovate on the line to sort of slow down the amount of holdup, for instance, on product, because you've now got these 30-second response times rather than 18 or 24 hours response time waiting for a regulation to be enforced.
Great. Thank you. Chair, I think you were muted there.
Sorry about that again. I want to thank all our participants. That's all the time we have because we have to vacate the room at 6:30 sharp. There's another committee after us. So I want to thank our panel for giving us an insight on our Canadian food processing sector. Thanks for all your really good information. And I want to start by thanking the Dean Council, Agriculture and Food Veterinary Medicine, Mr. Martin Scanlon, Dean, and also Christine Théoret, Dean of Faculté Médecine Vétérinaire, and also Food, Health and Consumer Product of Canada, Mr. Graydon. Thank you so much. And aussi la Société des packs d'engraissement, Mr. Jean-Sébastien Gascon.
And also Mr. Jean-Sébastien Gascon from the Société d'engraissement des packs. This concludes our meeting.
Thank you all for participating, and we'll see you at the next one.
Okay, thank you very much.